In the heart of a quiet, rural town, excitement buzzed like electricity in the air. For weeks, posters had been plastered on street lamps, store windows, and bulletin boards, each announcing the annual Dog Showcase, a beloved event where locals came to see the finest dogs in the region perform amazing feats of obedience, agility, and training. But this year's event promised something more, a special demonstration featuring 14 German Shepherds, all trained to work together as a team. Among the crowd gathering near the big open field where the event was set to take place was a little girl named Ellie. She was 9 years old, small for her age, with thick brown hair that fell in soft waves around her face and big eyes that seemed to soak up every detail of the world quietly. Ellie wasn't like most children in town. She rarely spoke. In fact, she was diagnosed with selective mutism, a condition that made it difficult for her to talk to anyone outside of her closest family. At school, teachers called her the quiet girl, and at home, her parents often worried about how she would manage in situations like this. Loud, crowded, and unfamiliar. Ellie's parents had debated for weeks whether to bring her to the dog showcase. They wanted to support her interests. Ellie loved animals more than anything, but they worried the noise in the crowd might overwhelm her. Still today, Ellie had insisted. Her father remembered how she had looked at the posters weeks ago and quietly said, "I want to see the dogs." That was all the encouragement they needed. Now, standing among the throng of people, Ellie clutched her favorite stuffed puppy tightly in one hand. The puppy, a well-worn gift from her grandmother, was her comfort object, and today it felt especially necessary. Around her, children shouted and laughed, dogs barked, and the smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with popcorn from nearby stands. But Ellie's world was quieter. She noticed things others might miss. The way a dog's tail twitched with excitement, the careful steps of a handler in worn leather boots, the soft murmur of voices blending with the occasional bark. At the far end of the field, the German Shepherds arrived. 14 of them, all strong and sleek, with eyes sharp and attentive. They moved as one, a perfect, disciplined pack under the careful control of their trainers. Ellie's eyes widened as the dogs formed a neat line, their fur gleaming in the sunlight. There was something majestic about them, something that made Ellie's chest feel tight with admiration. Her parents found a spot near the back of the crowd where Ellie could see the entire demonstration without being pushed or jostled. She sat on the grass, the puppy held close, watching the dogs perform flawless commands. Sitting, staying, running through obstacle courses. The handlers called out signals, and the dogs obeyed instantly, a testament to years of training and trust. Ellie's face remained calm, almost expressionless to those who didn't know her, but inside, she was mesmerized. She had always felt a special connection to dogs, especially her own little German Shepherd mix Max, who waited patiently at home. Max had been her quiet companion through lonely days and difficult moments, a friend who never judged or pressured her to speak. As the showcase went on, a sudden announcement broke the rhythm. One of the scheduled volunteers had to cancel at the last minute. The handlers called for a replacement from the audience. The crowd buzzed with whispers. It was unusual for children to participate in this particular demonstration, especially with so many well-trained dogs involved. Ellie's parents exchanged worried glances. They didn't expect Ellie to step forward. But then, almost imperceptibly, she shifted in her seat. Slowly, deliberately, she stood up, clutching her stuffed puppy tighter than before. Her eyes locked on the ring where the dogs stood waiting. The murmurs around her grew louder. Did she just volunteer? Is she sure? A little girl alone. Ellie's mother's heart pounded. She whispered, "Ellie, are you sure?" But Ellie didn't look back. She began to walk forward, her steps small but steady. The crowd parted just enough to let her pass. 14 German Shepherds towered on all sides, powerful yet calm. The handlers tensed, ready to intervene if needed, but Ellie kept moving, calm and fearless in a way that surprised everyone. She reached the center of the field and stopped. The dogs stood silently, waiting. The entire crowd fell into a hush, eyes wide, breaths held. No one could have predicted what would happen next. Ellie stood frozen in the middle of the field, surrounded by the powerful presence of 14 German shepherds. The air seemed to thicken with anticipation. The crowd, which had been buzzing just moments before, now held its breath in stunned silence. No one moved, no one spoke. Only the soft panting of the dogs and the gentle rustling of leaves filled the space. Ellie's heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a strange sense of calm determination. Around her, the German shepherds were magnificent creatures, large, alert, and disciplined, their coats shining in the late afternoon sun. Their eyes locked onto her with a strange mixture of curiosity and respect. These dogs were trained to obey commands from experienced handlers, not a little girl who barely spoke a word. The handlers exchanged quick glances, their hands twitching near their leashes. One stepped forward, ready to take control, but something stopped him. Ellie's steady gaze met his, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. She didn't need anyone to speak for her. She was about to show them a different kind of language. Ellie slowly reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was a cheat sheet of hand signals, simple commands she had learned from her therapy sessions with Max, her own German shepherd mix at home. Her parents had helped her practice in the quiet of their living room, teaching her to communicate without words. With the crowd watching, Ellie raised her hand and began to make the first signal, a flat palm held out, palm down, moving slowly towards the ground. The dogs responded immediately. One by one, they lowered themselves into a sitting position, their ears twitching in perfect synchronization. The crowd gasped. Ellie's lips didn't move, but her eyes shone with quiet confidence. She moved her hand again, this time sweeping it in a gentle arc. The dogs, as if understanding the rhythm of her movements, lay down calmly in unison. The audience watched, spellbound. A little girl, silent and small, commanding the attention of 14 magnificent German shepherds, with nothing but hand signals and a calm presence. Her parents looked on with a mixture of pride and amazement. They knew how difficult it was for Ellie to even speak a single word in public. But here she was, standing in the middle of a field full of trained dogs, communicating through silence and movement. It was as if the dogs sensed something deep inside her, a gentleness, a calm strength that made them trust her completely. One of the trainers stepped forward, lowering his voice to explain to the crowd what was happening. Ellie has been part of a therapy program for children with anxiety and speech difficulties, he said. She's worked with dogs like these to build confidence and trust. What you're seeing is not just training, it's a bond, a connection that goes beyond words. The crowd's initial surprise softened into admiration. Parents whispered to each other, pointing at Ellie with smiles of encouragement. Some wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the quiet courage of this little girl who spoke volumes without uttering a sound. Ellie continued to demonstrate her signals. She commanded the dogs to roll over, and they did so with graceful ease. She cupped her hands to her chest, signaling them to come closer. Slowly, the dogs gathered around her in a circle, noses touching her outstretched hands. The scene was so peaceful, so harmonious, it was almost magical. A hush fell over the audience. For many, it was the first time they realized that silence could be a language of its own, one filled with patience, empathy, and connection. Ellie's silence was not emptiness, it was power. Suddenly, one of the older German shepherds, the largest of the pack, stood and placed a gentle paw on Ellie's knee. The crowd gasped again, touched by the tenderness of the moment. Ellie smiled softly, the first sign of emotion anyone had seen from her all day. The demonstration ended with Ellie still at the center of the circle, surrounded by dogs who obeyed not out of fear or command, but out of trust and respect. The handlers applauded quietly, and the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering in awe. Ellie's parents rushed forward to embrace her, their eyes shining with tears. For a moment, no words were needed. Ellie's actions had spoken louder than anything she could say. As the crowd began to disperse, whispers of Ellie's courage and connection with the dogs spread like wildfire. People talked about the quiet girl who had silenced an entire field full of people and dogs alike. But for Ellie, the day was not about applause or recognition. It was about feeling seen and understood in a world that often demanded words she couldn't find. Here, surrounded by her four-legged friends, she had found her voice. Ellie's small feet carried her steadily across the grassy arena, every step measured and sure. The crowd's chatter faded into a tense silence as the little girl walked toward the center, surrounded by 14 alert German shepherds standing like statues around her. The dogs' powerful bodies towered over her tiny frame, but Ellie moved without hesitation or fear. The handlers stood ready, eyes sharp and hands twitching near leashes, prepared to intervene at the first sign of trouble. But Ellie's calm presence seemed to diffuse the tension instantly. It was as if she and the dogs were speaking a silent language, one that needed no words. "Is she really going to do this?" whispered a woman from the front row, clutching her child's hand. The question hung in the air like a delicate thread. Ellie stopped in the middle of the field, took a deep breath, and slowly lowered herself onto the soft grass, folding her legs beneath her. The crowd leaned forward, curious, their eyes locked on the unexpected scene unfolding before them. A small girl, silent and still, sitting quietly among 14 highly trained German shepherds. The moment felt surreal, both fragile and powerful. One of the dogs, a handsome male with a sleek black and tan coat named Rex, was the first to approach. He sniffed the air, then cautiously moved closer, his amber eyes calm and observant. Ellie held out her hand in a gentle gesture, palm facing down. Rex lowered his massive head and nudged her fingers with his wet nose. A collective sigh swept through the crowd. Slowly, one by one, the other dogs followed. Their massive heads lowered, their bodies relaxed, and soon they were all gathered around Ellie, their eyes soft and attentive. The handlers, who had been tense moments before, exchanged astonished looks. This was no ordinary demonstration. It was something extraordinary. Ellie's fingers began to move in small, practiced motions. She traced a slow circle in the air, then swept her hand downward. The dogs responded immediately, each one obeying her silent command. They sat, then lay down, moving in perfect unison. The crowd watched, mesmerized. No one could take their eyes off the quiet girl who had just transformed the entire atmosphere with nothing but her presence and gentle gestures. Parents clutched their children tighter, and even the dogs in the audience seemed to sense the significance of the moment. Behind the scenes, the lead trainer whispered to a colleague, "She's got away with them, doesn't she? This girl understands the dogs in a way most people never will." Ellie's parents stood at the edge of the field, hearts pounding with a mixture of pride and disbelief. They had known their daughter was special, but today was more than they had ever imagined. Ellie was showing the world that silence was not a limitation, it was a different kind of strength. As the demonstration continued, Ellie moved her hands with confidence. The dogs rolled over, shook paws, and even performed a few playful spins. Each action was met with delighted applause from the crowd, their initial shock replaced with admiration. Then came the moment that truly stunned everyone. Ellie reached out to Rex once more. Instead of a simple paw shake, Rex lifted his large paw and rested it gently on Ellie's knee. The gesture was tender and full of trust, a silent promise between them. Ellie smiled, a rare and radiant expression lighting up her face. For a brief moment, the world seemed to stop. Cameras flashed, capturing the unforgettable scene of a little girl and her dog sharing a bond that transcended words. The crowd erupted into cheers, many moved to tears. Strangers turned to one another, exchanging smiles and whispers of awe. "She's amazing," one woman said softly. "She speaks without saying a word." Ellie's parents rushed forward to embrace her, wrapping their arms around their quiet daughter. No words were spoken, but the warmth in their eyes said everything. Today had been a turning point, not just for Ellie, but for everyone who had witnessed her courage and connection. As the applause died down and the dogs returned to their handlers, Ellie stood up, still holding her stuffed puppy tightly. She glanced out at the crowd, and for the first time that day, allowed herself a small wave. The moment was simple yet profound. The silent girl had spoken louder than anyone else in the field. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the grassy field where Ellie now stood surrounded by 14 magnificent German shepherds. The crowd's applause had faded into a hushed, expectant silence, as if they were witnessing something sacred unfolding. Ellie's small frame was calm, her gaze steady and filled with a quiet confidence that belied her age and silence. The handlers, still watching closely, allowed Ellie the space she needed. It was clear she had a connection with the dogs that went beyond commands or training. She wasn't just leading them, she was communicating with them in a language only they understood. Ellie's hands moved slowly, deliberately, weaving a rhythm in the air. Each subtle motion was a signal, learned and perfected over months of practice with Max, her own beloved German shepherd. She raised one palm, then flicked her fingers softly. The dogs responded immediately. Their ears perked, their bodies shifted, and they began to move in a flowing, coordinated dance. One by one, the dogs rose to their feet, moving like shadows beneath the fading sunlight. They circled Ellie carefully, never crowding but always attentive. Their movements were graceful and controlled, a beautiful choreography of trust and discipline. It was as if the 14 dogs were extensions of Ellie's own spirit, moving in harmony with her silent commands. The crowd was captivated. Phones were raised to capture every moment, but no recording could capture the magic of what was happening in person. There was a profound beauty in the silent exchange. The way the dogs moved effortlessly with Ellie's cues, and how she, in turn, seemed to draw strength from their presence. Ellie's fingers traced a slow arc, signaling the dogs to sit. They obeyed instantly, lowering their bodies to the grass with precision. She then pointed toward the sky, a signal for them to stay. The dogs held their positions, eyes fixed on her face, waiting for the next cue. A deep hush fell over the audience. It was clear that this was no ordinary dog show demonstration. What Ellie was creating was a living poem, a dance of trust and understanding between a little girl and her loyal companions. The lead trainer, standing nearby, spoke softly into a microphone to explain to the crowd. "This is what happens when patience, empathy, and love combine with training," he said. "Ellie has learned to communicate in ways most of us never imagine. These dogs don't just obey her, they listen with their hearts." Ellie's eyes never left the dogs. She reached out her hand and gently stroked Rex's head, the largest of the shepherds, who closed his eyes in contentment. A ripple of emotion swept through the crowd. They weren't just watching a demonstration, they were witnessing a bond that transcended spoken language. Suddenly, Ellie moved her hands in a swift, fluid motion, an invitation. The dogs responded by moving toward her in a slow, graceful approach, as if answering a call only they could hear. The field became a stage where trust was the script and silence was the dialogue. Parents nearby whispered to their children, explaining in hushed tones, "See, you don't always need words to say something important." Children's eyes widened with wonder, captivated by the unusual and beautiful display. For Ellie, this dance was not just a performance, it was a moment of freedom. In the silence that enveloped her, she found a voice stronger than words. The German shepherds, with their powerful presence and gentle loyalty, had become her partners, her friends, and her protectors. As the sun dipped lower, casting a warm glow, Ellie led the dogs in one last move. With a sweeping gesture, she signaled them to sit in a tight circle around her. The dogs settled down, their bodies close but relaxed, a perfect ring of trust and affection. The crowd burst into applause once again, many standing to give the girl and her dogs a standing ovation. Ellie's parents stepped forward, their faces glowing with pride. They knew this day was more than just a showcase. It was a glimpse of Ellie's incredible spirit, shining bright without uttering a single word. Ellie looked up at the cheering crowd, her eyes sparkling with a quiet joy. For a moment, she was no longer the silent girl on the outskirts. She was the heart of the moment, the center of a circle of trust, and the voice of a story that would be remembered long after the dogs had left the field. The applause still echoed faintly in the air as Ellie knelt quietly among the circle of German shepherds, her fingers gently stroking the soft fur of Rex, the largest of the pack. The warmth of the moment wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing the quiet parts of her soul that had long yearned to be understood. For years, Ellie had lived in a world filled with silence, her voice locked away by invisible barriers she could neither break nor explain. But here, surrounded by these magnificent dogs, words were unnecessary. Their eyes spoke a language of acceptance, loyalty, and unconditional love. Her parents watched from the sidelines, tears glistening in their eyes. They had struggled for so long to help their daughter find her place in a world that often felt too loud, too fast, too overwhelming. Doctors had offered many labels and treatments, but none seemed to unlock the door Ellie kept firmly closed. Until now. The dog trainers gathered around, their expressions softening as they looked at Ellie. "You got something special, kid," one whispered, smiling. "This bond. It's rare. These dogs aren't just trained, they are connected to you." Ellie didn't speak, but she smiled back, a small, shy curve of her lips that carried more meaning than words ever could. As the crowd began to disperse, the lead trainer approached Ellie's parents with an invitation. "We'd like to offer Ellie a place in our advanced training program," he said gently. "Working with these dogs can help her build confidence and maybe even find her voice." Ellie's mother exchanged a glance with her husband, hope blooming where there had been so much uncertainty. "Thank you," she said softly. "We'd love that." Later that evening, as Ellie sat at the kitchen table with her family, she pulled out her favorite stuffed puppy. It was her silent companion through every challenge and triumph. Her father placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes filled with pride. "You were amazing today, Ellie. You showed everyone how strong you are." Ellie's eyes flickered toward him, and for the first time in a long while she whispered, "Thank you." The words hung in the air like fragile glass, delicate but powerful. Over the next few weeks, Ellie began attending the advanced program. Every session was a new adventure, learning to communicate with hand signals, understanding dog behavior, and building trust with her four-legged partners. The dogs responded to her calm presence, their loyalty deepening with each passing day. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows over the training field, Ellie faced a challenge that would test everything she had learned. The lead trainer set up a complex obstacle course, one designed for experienced handlers and their dogs. It was daunting, even for adults. Ellie's heart raced. She glanced at the dogs, then down at her hands, steady and ready. She could feel Max's spirit beside her, even though he was not there. Taking a deep breath, she gave the first signal. The dogs moved as one, weaving through the obstacles with precision and grace. Ellie's confidence grew with every step, her hands flowing smoothly through the motions. The crowd that gathered to watch held their breath as the pack navigated jumps, tunnels, and tight turns flawlessly. When the dogs completed the course, Ellie stood still, her face flushed with pride. The applause was thunderous. But more than the cheers, Ellie felt a spark inside her, a sense of belonging, of purpose. That evening, as Ellie lay in bed clutching her stuffed puppy, she realized something important. The silence that had once isolated her was no longer a prison. It was her strength. Through patience, courage, and the unspoken bond with her dogs, Ellie had found a way to communicate her truth. Her parents watched from the doorway, their hearts full. They knew this was just the beginning of a journey, one filled with challenges, yes, but also with hope, love, and incredible possibilities. Ellie had found her voice in the silence, and the world was listening. Days turned into weeks, and Ellie's world began to expand in ways her family had only dreamed of. The once silent girl was slowly discovering that her voice didn't have to be spoken. It could be felt, seen, and understood through the deep bond she shared with the German shepherds. Her training sessions became the highlight of her week. The dogs seemed to sense her progress, responding with ever-growing enthusiasm and trust. Max's spirit, though no longer physically present, was felt in every wagging tail and every loyal glance. One bright morning, Ellie arrived at the training center feeling a flutter of nervous excitement. Today was different. The lead trainer had arranged a special event, a public demonstration where Ellie and the dogs would showcase everything they had learned. It was an opportunity to share Ellie's journey and inspire others. As the crowd gathered once again in the familiar grassy field, Ellie felt the weight of eyes upon her. The silence that had once filled her with fear was now a canvas waiting to be painted with courage. Ellie took her place in the center, her hands steady and her heart beating with quiet determination. The 14 German shepherds surrounded her like guardians, their eyes shining with loyalty. The crowd fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. The trainer gave a gentle nod, and Ellie began. Her fingers moved gracefully, weaving a story without words. The dogs followed her lead flawlessly, performing intricate maneuvers that blended obedience with artistry. They jumped, spun, and shifted in perfect harmony, a living symphony of trust. Then something extraordinary happened. Ellie paused, and instead of giving a command, she looked out at the crowd. Her lips parted slightly, and a soft, clear voice emerged, one she had been practicing in secret for months. "Thank you." The crowd gasped, the simple words carrying the weight of years. Ellie's parents gasped, tears streaming down their faces. The trainer smiled broadly, his pride shining. The dogs sat attentively, as if understanding the moment's significance. Ellie's voice, though quiet, was a powerful bridge between her world and the one around her. Over the following days, news of Ellie's demonstration spread far beyond the small town. Her story of courage, trust, and silent strength touched hearts everywhere. People marveled at how a little girl, once lost in silence, had found her voice through love and connection. Ellie continued her journey, growing more confident with each passing day. She learned to balance spoken words with the language of gestures and glances. The German shepherds remained her steadfast companions, symbols of her resilience and hope. At school, Ellie's classmates began to see her in a new light. No longer just the quiet girl in the back of the classroom, Ellie became a source of inspiration. Teachers praised her determination, and friends sought her out for her gentle kindness and unwavering courage. One afternoon, Ellie's teacher invited her to share her story with the class. Standing before her peers, Ellie spoke softly but clearly, telling them about the dogs, the training, and the strength she found in silence. The room filled with applause, and Ellie felt a warmth spread through her chest, a feeling she had never known before. Her family celebrated every step of her progress, cherishing the moments that once seemed impossible. Ellie's journey was a testament to the power of patience, love, and the unspoken bonds that connect us all. As the sun set on another day, Ellie sat quietly with Max, her faithful stuffed puppy, by her side. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but she was ready. With the dogs, her family, and her newfound voice, Ellie was no longer confined by silence. She was free. Ellie's journey had become something far greater than anyone had imagined. What started as a quiet girl standing among 14 German shepherds had blossomed into a symbol of hope and courage that inspired the whole community. The days were busy now, filled with training, school, and moments of quiet reflection. Ellie's parents watched her closely, amazed by the transformation unfolding before their eyes. Their daughter, who once struggled to communicate, was blossoming into a confident young girl, her voice no longer bound by silence alone. One afternoon, the training center received an invitation to participate in a regional dog competition. It was a prestigious event, drawing the best trainers and dogs from across the state. For Ellie, it was more than just a competition. It was a chance to show the world the strength she had found through her bond with the dogs. Ellie's heart fluttered with nerves and excitement. She wasn't just competing for trophies, she was carrying a story of resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a girl and her dogs. On the day of the competition, Ellie arrived early, her hands trembling slightly as she held her stuffed puppy close. The German shepherds were calm and steady, sensing her feelings and offering silent comfort. The arena was vast, filled with bright lights and a crowd that buzzed with anticipation. Ellie stepped into the center, the familiar dogs gathering around her like a protective circle. The crowd quieted as the music began, a gentle melody that seemed to echo the rhythm of Ellie's heart. Ellie began the routine she had practiced so many times. Her hands moved gracefully, signaling the dogs through each complex maneuver. The dogs responded flawlessly, their powerful bodies moving in harmony, weaving a story without a single spoken word. The audience was spellbound. They watched as Ellie and the dogs danced across the arena, a living testament to patience, love, and unspoken communication. Her parents sat in the stands, holding hands tightly, their eyes shining with pride. As the routine neared its end, Ellie took a deep breath and spoke again, her voice clear and steady. "Thank you." The words carried across the arena, touching every heart present. The crowd erupted into applause, some standing to honor the little girl who had found her voice in the silence. Ellie's performance didn't just earn top scores, it earned something far more precious. She earned the respect and admiration of everyone who witnessed the incredible bond she shared with the dogs. Backstage, Ellie hugged each dog, her fingers tracing their fur with affection. She looked up at her parents, who smiled through their tears. "You did it, Ellie," her mother whispered. "You showed the world who you really are." But Ellie knew this was only the beginning. Her journey was far from over, and there were still challenges to face. She would continue to grow, to learn, and to inspire others with her courage. In the days that followed, Ellie was invited to share her story on local radio and at schools. Her message was simple but powerful. Communication isn't always about words. Sometimes it's about listening with your heart and trusting the connections that transcend language. Ellie's classmates rallied around her, and new friendships blossomed. She became a symbol of bravery, showing that silence was not a barrier but a different way of being heard. One evening, as Ellie sat beneath a sky full of stars, she held Max close and whispered a promise to herself. No matter what the future held, she would always embrace her silence as her strength. She would continue to stand tall among the dogs and the people who loved her, knowing that her voice was heard loud and clear. Ellie had learned that sometimes the most powerful stories are told without words, and hers was just beginning. The seasons changed, but Ellie's journey continued to bloom like the spring flowers that brightened the training center's fields. The once quiet girl who had stood among 14 German shepherds had become a beacon of hope, a living proof that courage and connection can transcend even the deepest silence. Months after the regional competition, Ellie's story had spread far beyond her small town. Invitations arrived from schools, community centers, and even animal therapy organizations, eager to learn from her and the remarkable bond she shared with the dogs. One chilly autumn morning, Ellie found herself standing before a packed auditorium at a nearby school. The air was crisp and the golden leaves swirled gently outside the windows. She wasn't nervous this time. She was ready. Ready to share her story, ready to inspire others to find their own voice, whatever form it might take. Ellie's parents sat in the front row, their faces glowing with pride. The German shepherds, calm and poised, waited patiently behind her, sensing the importance of the moment. Taking a deep breath, Ellie stepped up to the microphone. Her voice was soft but steady, and as she spoke, the audience was drawn into her world. She told them about the silence that once wrapped around her like a heavy cloak, about the loneliness and frustration she felt. But most of all, she shared how love and trust, found in the eyes of her dogs, had unlocked a new way to communicate. She spoke of patience, of kindness, and of believing in yourself, even when the world seems too big and too loud. She explained how the dogs weren't just her companions. They were her teachers, guiding her toward a voice beyond words. The audience listened in rapt attention, moved by Ellie's courage and grace. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, cheers that echoed the love and admiration that had surrounded her since the very beginning. Later that day, as Ellie walked outside with her dogs, she felt a gentle breeze brush against her face. She looked up at the sky, the clouds painted in hues of pink and orange by the setting sun. It was a perfect moment, a moment of peace and possibility. Her parents joined her, their arms wrapped around her in a warm embrace. "Ellie," her father said softly, "you've taught all of us something very important. That sometimes the strongest voices come from the quietest places." Ellie smiled, her heart full. She knew her journey was just starting. There would be challenges ahead, new adventures, and times when silence might return. But she was ready. With her dogs by her side, her family's love around her, and the strength she had found inside, Ellie was prepared to face whatever came next. She knelt down to hug Max, her faithful stuffed puppy, and whispered a secret only she and the dogs knew. "Thank you for helping me find my voice." As night fell, Ellie stood tall among her 14 German shepherds once more. The world was vast and sometimes scary, but she was no longer alone. In the silence, she had found her strength. In the quiet, she had found her voice. And that voice, though soft and sometimes spoken without words, would echo far and wide, inspiring others to listen, to trust, and to believe in the power of connection. Because sometimes the most powerful stories are told not with sound, but with the language of the heart.